Welcome back to the module on spatial query languages. So far you have seen two videos. The first talked about the notion of queries and the notion of query languages. The second one introduced you to a very simple database with three tables: countries, rivers and cities. And it also talked about the big picture of SQL, showing you three modules: data definition language and data manipulation language and data control language. Okay. In this video, we are going to go inside those modules. So we'll help you look inside data definition language, particularly create table statement. So at the end of this module, you should be able to know how a table is defined. Okay. We'll also delve inside data manipulation language and look at the insert statement, using which we populate a table which is already in place. Okay. So without further ado, let's look inside that. In order to define the table, we use create table statement. At the bottom of this slide, you see an example. Okay. So when you see this create table, you first see the name river. So this is creating a table with the name river. And then it is listing all the columns of this table. So in this case, you see the columns name, origin, length and shape. So this table has 4 columns. With each columns, we also specify the data type. So name, for example, the data type is string. In SQL, it is a variable length character string, short form varchar, and 30 tells you the maximum length. So the name can have up to 30 characters. Origins is similar. The length is just a number. So there is a unit implicit, maybe in miles or kilometers. And then shape is our geographic data type. So as we discussed before, this may be essentially a line string, which is a sequence of straight lines, and it may designate the center line of a river. Okay. So that explanation is provided in this text. Again, the keywords are create table. They are both keywords. They have to be used as it is. And then it's followed by the table name. Then in between parentheses, we list the column names and their data types. So once this statement is executed, then we have an empty table with specified number of columns. Now in case we decided that this table should have an extra column or maybe one less column, then in order to change the table schema, we can use the alter statement. So we are not going to show you the details of the syntax, but it is very similar. You can go and rename a particular column or change the data type in the schema and so on. Okay. Another data definition language statement is drop table. So for some reason, if a table is obsolete and we don't need it anymore, then we can remove it from the database schema using drop table. Usually the database will expect the table to be empty. So if this table has any data, it will expect you to clean that out before we drop the table. Okay. So most organizations have a special role called database administrator, and usually the schema modification, either via adding table or dropping table or changing table definitions, are restricted to people with enough data privilege, and that often is the database administrator. But let's continue on. Let's assume that we do have a table, and when create table ends, there is a table, but it's empty. There is no data in it. All we have is a definition of its schema, how many columns and data types. If we want to populate the table, then we have to go to data manipulation language. And one common statement with which we add a single row at a time is insert. So this slide we are showing you the insert statement. Again, there are two keywords, insert into. Then we name the table. In this case, that table is river table. Now, when we insert a row, we have two choices. Okay, we can specify data for every column in this table. So let's say this table has 3 columns. You could specify data for each one of them. So here we are saying for the name column, this row should have Mississippi. For the origin column, the value should be USA, and the length is 6,000 kilometers. But if we don't have data for all the columns, we can leave a few columns unspecified, and this statement will essentially put an undefined or a null value in there. Okay. So again, it is explaining the meaning of this insert statement. There are two keywords, insert into, then you specify table name such as river, then you specify the set of columns for which the data is going to be provided, and then another keyword values, and then another set of parentheses to specify values. Okay. Now, adding data one row at a time gets us started, but there are situations where we need to insert many rows at the same time. Okay? And then we have two choices. Either we can write one insert statement, the kind we saw before, for each row. So if you have 5 or 10 rows, it's still a reasonable task, one can do that. But if in databases, often we insert thousands or even millions of rows at a time, and in those cases just writing so many insert statement is tedious, and it also becomes performance overhead. So databases provide other facilities to insert bulk rows, one of which is you can use a select statement with the into clause to load a set of rows from one table to the other. Databases also provide bulk load utilities, which are often outside SQL. They run as a command on your operating system script. And then another related statement is delete. So once we have populated the table, but we decide that certain rows are obsolete, we don't need them, then delete statement allows you to remove them. You also have an update statement, which can go and change just a few columns within a row. Okay? So this gives us a quick overview of ways to create a table and populate a table in SQL. When we come back, we are going to delve more into querying part. So we assume a table is created, it has been populated with relevant data, and then we are going to work with select statement to extract interesting subsets of these rows, and those are what are called queries.